Hello, my name is LoG's and welcome to my new series on the very popular sound known as Diminished 7. We're going to go over a variety of ways to use this sound, including the way that I used it in this short. If you're playing standard minor pentatonic like this, and you want to add a little bit of extra color to your playing, try using diminished seventh arpeggios. This sound is remarkably easy to use once you get some shapes and understand the structure. You're basically starting on a note, going up or down minor thirds over and over again until you want to resolve back to the minor sound. So I can start here, up a minor third, down a minor third, down, 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 and then resolve. Resolving is usually done by ear, so that'll take a second to get used to, but once you practice it, not that difficult. What you're really doing is implying this chord, that dominant 7/5 chord that takes you to your minor chord. That diminished sound works perfectly with that chord also. The best way to find these, look for your roots, root, 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 go back a fret, start any diminished idea you want right there. So I can do this, back a fret, or something more notey. Or off of a different root. How about this one? Back a fret. In part one, we're going to look at the unique structure of this sound and how we can use this unique structure to very easily create lead and chord figures around the fretboard. If you enjoy this approach and this type of instructional material, feel free to check out my Patreon at the link above or below. And now, let's begin our journey to the land of Diminished 7. All right, so in this series, we are going to focus on the most practical approach to using this diminished 7 sound as a transition chord, which is by far the most common way you'll hear this sound throughout history. And we're going to start as a transition chord moving to a minor chord. Now, you can use this moving to any chord, but moving to minor not only is very common, but it's also probably the easiest way to use this sound. So I'll give you an example of that in a lead context as well as a chord context. So here I am playing a little A minor, let's say. And then I'll play a little diminished lead that points our ears back to the A minor. A minor. Diminished. Right? I can also do it as a chord context. Here's an A minor chord. I'll play a little diminished transition chord that points your ears back to that A minor sound. Very common sound. Many of you are probably familiar with this, but if you are not familiar with this sound, do not get intimidated by the naming conventions. Diminished, diminished 7, ooh, sounds so fancy. This sound is remarkably easy to use, play, and create with on the guitar specifically, because of the way it is structured out, which we will talk about today. And once you know kind of where to use it, how to use it, it is a sound that can be very easily applied to a variety of situations. So what I am not going to talk about today is the origin of this sound, kind of where it comes from, why it is structured in the unique way that it is, because it would just make the video longer than the video's already going to be. But if you are interested in that, I will put a link to a video I did on my Patreon in the description where I go very in-depth as to why this diminished 7 sound exists, where it comes from, which I think is important, but again, not the point of today's video. So with all that in mind, let's talk about what diminished 7 actually is and why it's so easy to approach on the fretboard. So before we begin, the technical term for this sound is diminished 7, but throughout the video, I'm probably just going to be calling it diminished, which is technically a different thing, but just to keep things simple, I'll probably just be using the term diminished. But make no mistake, when I use that term, I'm talking about this sound that we are going to be discussing right now. So first of all, what is this sound? It's a sound made of 4 notes, just like a normal kind of 4-note chord, but the distances between all the notes are uniform, which is significant. So what do I mean by the distances between all of the notes? I'm going to demonstrate that with a very simple C chord, C major. Okay, so first of all, what are the notes of a C major chord? It is simply C, E, and G, or C majors, root, or 1, 3rd, and 5th. How do I find these notes? I just simply play a C major scale, find the first note, which is C, the 3rd note, 1, 2, 3, which is E, and the 5th note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is G. That's how every single major chord in existence is built. So if I look at those 3 notes, C, E, and G, on one string, we can see the distance between those notes and see if there's anything interesting. So here's C right here. The next note, the third of the chord, is E, which is right here. Okay, you'll notice the distance between these two notes if I play them like that. It's about 1, 2, 3, 4 frets apart. You can also look at it as 2 whole steps apart, right? 1, 2, 3, right there. Okay, interesting. How about the distance between E and G, the third and fifth? It looks like this. This is only 1, 2, 3 frets apart, right? A little smaller than the first one, so inconsistent. How about the G right here, the fifth, up to the 1 up the octave, which is right there, that's C. This is the biggest distance of all of them. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets, right? Don't necessarily have to memorize that, but just be aware that they're different. The distance between the first 2 notes is this. Distance between the next 2 is a little smaller. Distance between the final 2, the fifth back to the root, is the biggest of all of them. This kind of structure where you have inconsistent distances between all of the notes is how every chord generally is built. A minor chord, if you do the same thing, they're different distances. A major 7 chord, do the same thing, you're going to have different distances. A dominant 7th, a minor 7 flat 5, a minor 7, a minor 6. All of those chords are going to have different distances between the notes, but not diminished 7. Okay, so what do I mean? How can I demonstrate that? I'm going to play B diminished 7 on one string and take a look at the distances between all of the notes. The notes inside of a B diminished chord, diminished 7, are B, D, F, and A flat. Later on in the video, I'm probably going to be calling that G sharp, but that's not important right now. Let's take a look at the distances between these notes. Here's B right here. That's our starting note. D, the next note, is here. Take a look at how far apart these 2 notes are. That's 1, 2, 3 frets, or like a step and a half, okay? All right, what about D to F? Here's our D. I'll move my pointer finger there. F is right here. This is 3 frets, 1, 2, 3, or a step and a half. How about the next 2? F to A flat, which is right here. This is 3 frets, 1, 2, 3, or a step and a half. How about A flat back to the beginning note B, but up an octave, right? This is A flat up to the beginning note B, up an octave. This is 3 frets, 1, 2, 3, or a step and a half. Every note is the same distance apart from the previous. So if I play them all, B, D, F, A flat, and then B again. Now you might say, okay, well, that's kind of cool, but is it really that important? Does it really make that big of a difference? Absolutely, because if we want to create ideas, licks, chords, whatever, all we have to do is think about this distance. And if we start on a note, if we know our starting location for these sounds, we just have to make sure that we're connecting to the next note by always moving the same distance, and licks and shapes and all that stuff just kind of manifest by themselves. So now we have to say, what is this distance that we're playing, and how do we play this distance all over the guitar? So if I play the same distance right here from D to F, you'll notice that's that 3 fret distance we just talked about. In music, this would be called a minor third, or a flat third as well. Either name is fine. Why is that? Because if I play a normal D major scale starting on this note, looks like this. Notice the distance between D and its normal major third. This is called the major third because it's the third of this major sound that we just played. But we are not playing this, we are playing that. So it's this note, 3, but flat, hence flat third. And what is the main sound in music that has a flat 3 in it? That would be a minor chord, hence a minor third. Whichever term you want to use to describe this distance doesn't really matter, but I will probably be calling it a minor third throughout this video. So keep in mind, it is this distance. So if that's the case, all we need to do is figure out as many different ways to play a minor third on the guitar, and we should have access to this diminished 7 sound very easily. So let's do that. How many ways are there that we can play a minor third? You might think, oh, there's like a billion ways because the guitar is so complicated. But in reality, there are 2 ways to play a minor third off of a given note, and that is it. So if you don't believe me, check this out. Here's D. We know we can play a minor third just by going up 3 frets. I will refer to this particular minor third as a same string minor third because we're playing on the same string, right? D to F on the same string. Or we can do this. Here's our starting note. We can go down a string back 2 frets, which will yield the same note, the same interval distance. This is D to F, same string minor third, or I can play D to F. Notice it's the same sound. This is what I will refer to as the next string minor third. So you look at a note, you either play a minor third on the same string or on the next string by going down a string, back 2 frets. Guess what? Those are the only 2 ways to play a normal minor third on the whole guitar. Now, of course, you can do something like this. That's playing that same D to F, but that F is up an octave. That's something you can experiment with, and we'll probably do that when we talk about chords. But if we're just talking same octave, just the very next minor third, you're either on the same string or on the next string. That is it. Obviously, you can get silly and play D, F. That's also a minor third, but not really the point of this video. We're trying to look at it in the most practical way. So with that in mind, to create leads or melodies or figures that give us this diminished 7 sound, all we have to do is look at all the ways that we can combine those 2 different ways to play minor thirds. So check this out. I'm going to start on this D, and I'm going to go as far as possible and connect minor third to minor third until I run out of room. So I could just kind of logically approach it. I'm on my pointer finger right now, so I can just simply go to the minor third on the same string. It's very easily accessible. Pointer, pinky, there I am, I'm done. But if I happen to start on my ring finger, that same minor third that I just played is there, but it might not be as easily accessible, whereas the next string minor third is very accessible. So you can tell the fingering that you choose will kind of determine how the line will flow. But I'm going to start on my pointer finger right here. So let's just connect minor thirds. Pointer finger, same string minor third to the pinky. I can, of course, just slide up to the next one if I want to, but I'm going to try to stay here. So I can play same string minor third. I'm on my pinky. You know what I'm going to do? Next string minor third to the next one. Down a string, back 2 frets. That would be right here. So I'm going to play pointer finger, same string minor third. Next string minor third. I'm on my pointer finger. I can just do same string minor third again, right? Up 3 frets, just like it was. How about next string minor third? There's my pinky, down a string, back 2 frets. Pop my pointer finger right there. Same string minor third. I'm on my pointer finger. Just pop the pinky down. See how easy the shape is? Watch this. Same string, down a string. Same string, down a string. Same string. Now I'm going to move to the B string, down a string, which is where? Here's my pinky, down a string, back 2 frets. Let's do it. Wait a minute. That doesn't sound correct. The notes that we're playing this whole time have to be either D, F, A flat, or B. Let's see if they are. D, F, yeah, A flat, B, so far so good. D, F, that is not A flat, that's G. What is happening? I thought, wasn't this a minor third? Isn't that the sound of a minor third when you move down a string? It is, unless you are on the G string, like I am right now, moving to the B string. It does not look like this. Instead, it looks like this. It's down a string, only back 1 fret. Why is this? This is because the inconsistency of standard tuning. I'm sure you're already familiar with this as you move through scale shapes and whatnot. Things look different once you're on the G string transitioning to the B string. So keep that in mind. When you move down a string and play a minor third, it looks like this, down a string, back 2 frets on every pair of strings. So that's the E to the A string, A to the D string, D to the G string, even B to the high E string, but not the G to the B string. It's only down a string, back 1 fret. So as long as you keep that in mind and practice that, memorize that, every time you hit that pair of strings, make that little modification, and you have every possible way to connect minor thirds around the fretboard. So I'll do that whole run. Check this out. So pointer finger, right? Same fret, minor third. Next string, minor third. Same string. Next string. Same string. Next string, right here. I'm on my ring finger right now. So I can play same string, but it's pretty far. So you know what I'm going to do instead? Just another next string. Down to the high E string. And then same string. So notice, because of my fingering, and I'm making that little modification to make it work from the G to the B string, notice where that took me. That kind of took me this way, right? I started here, and I'm navigating basically up the fretboard like that. I'll play it again. Right? I kind of started here, ended there. By the way, I'm starting on a D and also ending on a D. But watch what can happen if I just make a little fingering change in the very beginning. So instead of pointer, pinky, same string, and then pointer finger down a string, right? I'm going to do pointer, pinky, middle finger on that next string. Watch what happens then. Same string, middle finger down a string. I can, of course, still reach that same string, but you know what I also have available? Another down a string minor third. So I can play same string, next string again, same string, next string. Notice the distance, it's different because I'm on the G to the B string. Then I can go next string again, and then same string. You see where this one took me? By changing that one finger in the very beginning. Instead of going pointer, pinky, pointer, I went pointer, pinky, middle. That gave me a figure that kind of kept me here. I almost kind of went backwards like that. Here's the first one. Here's the other one. See what happens? It's kind of keeping me right here, and that was entirely due to one little fingering change that I made. So you see how easy it is to adapt these shapes because you're just moving the same distance every time, a minor third. And because there are only two ways to do it, you're either doing it on the same string or down a string, which always looks like this, unless you get to the G and B strings, in which it only looks like that, down a string back one fret. You can kind of create these sounds, these shapes, however you want, whatever's comfortable for you. And it will change depending on what is technically comfortable. So, for example, many people like this particular shape, this like pointer pinky, then down a string, pointer pinky, down a string up a fret, again, pointer pinky, because it's very kind of symmetrical as you're moving like that. Personally, I actually don't like that. That's just my preference because of the way I play. I do a lot of pick and fingers. So I would actually prefer this one because it allows me to flow through the strings because I'll do like pick, hammer on, then middle finger on the D string, ring finger on the G string like that, and then another hammer on, and then again, fingers. That's probably how I would flow through that. Personally, that's how I would do it. But it's honestly up to you. You can just look at these distances, experiment in a way that makes sense for your technique and your sensibility, and you can endlessly create these sounds. The other thing that is really unique about this sound, and honestly why it's so easy to play on guitar, again, has to do with the distances between the notes. So you can see how easy it is to come up with figures just by connecting minor thirds. But not only are the notes minor thirds apart, you can take entire figures and phrases that you play and move the entire thing up or back minor thirds, or as I like to say, copy and paste up or back minor thirds, and the sound will be exactly the same. It might seem strange, like how is that possible? It doesn't make sense anywhere else. Like if I play a D minor 7 arpeggio right here, and then I move it up here, there's no way that's still D minor. That's clearly a different sound. But that's not the case with Diminished 7. Check this out. If I play a very small little figure, very common shape right here, I'll start on this B. So my shape looks like this. Same string minor third, next string minor third. There's the variation from the G to the B string. Next string minor third, same string. So it's like a 5-note phrase. Right? Same string, next string, same string. Check this out. I can take this entire figure, move the whole thing up 3 frets, do it again, and it's actually the same exact 4 notes. How is that possible? Check out the notes. This is B, D, F, A flat, B. Remember those notes. I'm going to move it up 3 frets, minor third, right? The same distance as the notes themselves. What are the notes now? D, F, A flat, B, D. Same 4 notes, just a different order. And then I can move it up again, another minor third, same distance. And what are the notes now? F, A flat, B, D, and F, same notes. And I can move it up again, and it will be A flat, B, D, F, A flat. Move it up again, I'm actually where I originally started, just up an octave. B, D, F, A flat, and then B. So any idea that you play, no matter the lick, no matter the figure, a chord shape as well, which we're going to talk about chords in a moment, all of these things are copy and pasteable up or back 3 frets or a minor third. Not only can you do that, but you can look for other interval distances that you can also copy and paste. For example, if I go back to the very beginning, so this was that D, same fret minor third, down a string minor third like we were talking about. But let me just take a look at the distance, not between the first two notes, but the D, skip the F, and then go to the A flat, that next note. Look at this distance. This is called a tritone, right? It's kind of like a power chord, but a flatted power chord. You can also call this a flat 5. That is another interval distance that lives inside this diminished 7 sound. So you know what that means? That means I can play a figure off of D, let's say the starting note, whatever it is, and then copy and paste it up a tritone and do it again, and it's going to be the same idea. Let's try it. So here's D. I'll do a little simple 4-note run. Same string, next string, next string. Okay, remember that structure. Start on a note, same string, next string, next string. Almost getting a little chord out of it, right? Guess what? I'm going to go here, do the same thing. Play the note, same string, next string, not next string, because of the tuning issue of the guitar. This minor third is here, so it looks like this. Guess what? All of those notes, same notes, just different order. Check this out. D, F, A flat, B, copy and paste, instead of doing it here, up a tritone, same thing. A flat, B, D, F. Same exact notes, different order, but same thing. So keep in mind that concept. I'm sure you've all heard it before where people do these like big runs and they just move it like that. I'm sure you've heard it 1,000 times. It's frankly a little overplayed. I will say that, unfortunately. But the reason why people do it, because it's so easy. You get one chord shape, you just move your hand up 3 frets, do it again, do it again, do it again over and over again until your band tells you to stop, until they get annoyed by your flailing around these notes. But that's why people like this so much, because it's unbelievably easy to play. You can copy and paste entire figures, leads, chords as well, which you'll see in a moment, up or back 3 frets, or up a tritone, the other distance between the notes. So before we move on, there's one thing I think is really important that you have to consider when you're practicing these. So now that you know the structure of how it's built and how easy it is to come up with these ideas and how you can copy and paste ideas up or back these distances, there's a good chance you're probably going to start practicing them like this. You're going to pick a starting location and you're going to go as far as possible. All right, here we go. Start here, run up the fretboard, all minor thirds. Cool, now I'm here, I'm gonna copy and paste, I'm gonna keep going, yeah, I'm doing it. Like, that's really cool, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. However, you don't want to only practice this sound with these like monster fretboard spanning licks. For one very clear reason, that type of movement, that type of like aggressive approach to the sound is not that useful. So to do this, there are obviously bands and many artists that play exactly like this, but the music kind of has to call for that moment, right? Diminished is a very specific and very obvious sound that you kind of, the music has to want that sound. Because if you start doing all of these huge runs, it kind of dominates the sound and it might not be the best thing to do for every single musical scenario you're in. But if the music calls for it, it can be a really cool sound. Like there's a band called Nevermore, and the song is called The River Dragon Has Come, I believe. And it's got like a really iconic diminished moment of the tune. I think it sounds like this. It's something along those lines. It's a really cool part. It's like an iconic, super cool, diminished moment. But the reason why that's happening is because that moment in that song is like made for that lick. It's made for those runs. But you can't really just toss that in to every musical situation and have it fit perfectly, because diminished is such a significant sound. So moral of the story is you can practice these monster licks to impress all your friends, but make sure you're also practicing this sound in a much more subtle, subdued way. So just practice figures that are like 3 notes. Maybe just do this. Just do that, or 4 notes, and practice that as an isolated figure, or maybe 5 notes. And then move that around the fretboard and just hit that as a tiny little touch of the diminished sound, which is way more useful in my opinion. You can sneak that stuff in to a huge variety of scenarios. If you're playing rock, if you're playing jazz, playing funk, blues, pop tunes, anything, you can definitely sneak in little pieces of the diminished sound basically everywhere just to get that little touch of those kind of slightly out sounds. And then you're right back into what you're normally going to play, which is what you'll hear me do over a solo here later on in the video. So practice both things. You can practice the monster licks to, pick up the chicks or whatever, but then also make sure you're playing them in a much more subtle way, because you can use that type of sound in way more scenarios than the monster licks. So now that we have a basic idea of how to build lead figures or single note figures that you can use for melodies, leads, licks, solos, whatever, let's now look at how we can build actual chord shapes out of this diminished 7 sound. So crucially, I'm actually going to be using the same pool of notes that I was using for the lead figures that we were creating, which were what? B, D, F, and A flat, those notes that were all minor thirds apart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to build a chord off of F, one of the notes of the diminished sound, which is going to yield the same 4 notes regardless of where we start because of the nature of this sound. And the reason why I'm choosing F, because it kind of puts me in the middle of the fretboard. It's just kind of easy for you watching this video to see what I'm doing. But you could do this off of any note, make no mistake. So if I wanted to build a diminished 7 chord, naturally you might just say, well, all I need to do is just play a note, go up a minor third, play that note at the same time, then go up another minor third, play that note at the same time until I have all 4 notes being played simultaneously. All right, well, should be pretty easy, right? Here's the note. That's F right here, tone up my guitar. There's F. I can go down a minor third, play these 2 notes at the same time. Of course, I can't go on the same string minor third, because then I'd be playing 2 notes on the same string. We're trying to play a chord, so we want all 4 notes happening simultaneously. So I can play F, next note, there's our A flat, down a minor third. Then I can go down a string, another minor third like this to get the B, right? And then I can go down a string, another minor third, only back 1 fret because of the tuning issue of the guitar, to get that final note, that D. So the chord looks like this. Success, I got it. So technically that is correct, but obviously that chord is very difficult to play, especially when you move to other strings. So there's got to be another more feasible way to play diminished chords. And there definitely is. And all we have to do is look at the other interval shapes that we have available. So if you remember, we know that it's just a bunch of minor thirds over and over again, as we just did. But what happens if we do this? Here's the F. Now I know I can go up a minor third, minor third, minor third over and over again. But remember, there was another interval in there, that tritone, right? What was the tritone? A tritone is just a note that is 2 minor thirds away. So I can play this note, go up a minor third, skip that note, go up another minor third and play that. That gives me the shape. 2 notes, tritone apart, really 2 minor thirds apart. So maybe I can start like that. This kind of a little bit more comfortable to play, kind of keeps me in position. Let's see if we can start with this interval and get all of the notes that we need. Remember, we need some sort of B, D, F, and A flat. So if I do that right here, I can play F, up a tritone gives me a B. Cool. Nice. So from here, maybe I could just go up another tritone. I know that interval exists. But if I do that, that just gives me another F. I already have an F right here. I don't necessarily want 2 Fs. I want 1 of each note. Okay, well, what else can I do? Playing F, up a tritone, B. Can I go up a minor third from this B? That would take me here, which we know that shape for sure. That's a D. That's one of the other notes we want, so perfect. I can play F, up a tritone B, up a minor third D. Maybe I can go up another minor third right here. That would give me this sound if I play it correctly. Nice, so is that the diminished chord? That's all correct, but the note I just added is F again. Remember, I already have an F. I still want the full 4 notes. I need an A flat somewhere. Well, guess what I can do? Here's my note. F, up a tritone, B, up a minor third D, and look what I can do. Up another tritone to the B string. Doesn't look like this, because the tuning issue of the guitar looks like this, and guess what note that is? A flat. So if I play this figure, a note, up a tritone, up a minor third, up a tritone, I actually have the full set of notes that I need for this sound. I have an F, I have a B, I have a D, and I have an A flat. Nice, this is significantly easier to play than just stacking minor thirds like I did earlier, and it's actually the same 4 notes, just in a different order to make it more feasible to play. And guess what? Just like the leads that we talked about, this chord on the middle 4 strings, A string, D string, G string, B string, is copy and pasteable up or back a minor third, just like we did. So I can play this chord right here. What were the notes? F, B, D, A flat, right? Move it back a minor third right here. Guess what the notes are? The same notes, just in a slightly different order. D, A flat, B, F, same 4 notes. I can even move it back again. Same shape, same 4 notes, just a different order. B, F, A flat, and then D. So just like the leads, this chord shape right here is perfectly copy and pasteable around the fretboard. And what is this chord structure? It's a note, up a tritone, up a minor third, up a tritone. With that in mind, can I take this structure of a chord and do it on the other set of strings? So I'm on the middle 4 strings. Can I move this down to the top 4 strings starting on the D string? Can I do that? Let's try it out. Let's first find one of our locations that we can play for this diminished sound. It's either going to be an F, a B, a D, or an A flat. I see an A flat right here. Pop down the note. Can I play the exact same chord structure, which was what? Remember, a note, up a tritone, up a minor third, up a tritone. Can I do that right here? Let's try it. Here's my note. Up a tritone would look like this, D string to G string. Up a minor third would look like this, not like that, because we're on the G string to the B string. And then from here, tritone looks normal like that. Check out this chord. A note, up a tritone, up a minor third, up a tritone. Is this correct? Sounds correct. What are the notes? We have an A flat, D, F, and then B. That's the full set of notes that we need. This is the same chord as this, right? Just a different order. And in fact, you can even see, look at where the bass note moves. Here's the note I'm playing on the A string. I'm moving where to get to the D string? Down a minor third, right? Just like we were playing leads. So I can play the chord here, go down a minor third, play this shape, the D string shape, which is the same thing. Again, it might be tricky to visualize because it looks different, but that's purely because of the inconsistency of standard tuning. But this is the exact same chord, just notes are in a different order. I can even do this to make it literally the same thing. Here it is right here. I can move up a minor third this way, which we know we can do, copy paste. Or instead of moving same string minor third to get to the next chord, I can move down a string, next string, minor third to get to the chord. Listen to this chord versus this. That is verbatim the same chord, same notes in the same order. This right here, A flat, D, F, B, or I play it right here, A flat, D, F, B. Literally the same thing. So you can see how easy this is to move around once you memorize the shapes. And the shapes are the same. They just look a little bit different because we're playing it on different sets of strings. Right? All right, we've got the middle 4 strings with our little structure, a note, up a tritone, up a minor third, up a tritone. We've got our D string version starting on the D string, a note, up a tritone, up a minor third, up a tritone. Surely we can do this on the thick 4 strings as well. Let's find a location. If we're playing the chord here, we can move down a tritone, play it right here. Should be the same set of notes. Let's try it out. Here's our starting note. Remember, up a tritone, which looks normal. Up a minor third looks normal. And then up a tritone also looks normal because we're not crossing over to that B string. So the shape right here looks like this. Again, looks different, but that's specifically because of the tuning of the guitar. This is the same exact structure of chord. A note, up a tritone, up a minor third, up a tritone, right? This is a B right here, notice. If I played the chord on the A string off of the same B, you'll notice it's the exact same thing, just looks different. B, F, A flat, D. B, F, A flat, D. Same exact chord, just looks different. So you see those shapes? Even though they all look different, the structure is the same. It's always a note, up a tritone, up a minor third, up a tritone. This is what it looks like on the E string if you want to just memorize that shape. Honestly, if I were you, memorizing the visual of what I'm showing you right now is good, but building the chord yourself is going to be better. Take the moment to build it yourself. You're going to memorize it much faster. But this is what it looks like on the E string. This is what it looks like on the A string, right? A note, up a tritone, up a minor third, up a tritone. And then this is what it would look like on the D string. A note, up a tritone, up a minor third, up a tritone. And I would practice, of course, copying and pasting the exact same voicing around the fretboard like this, up minor third or back minor third. But I would also practice transitioning to other strings, like down a minor third here, which puts you on the A string, which makes you play this fingering. Copy and paste up or back 3 frets like normal, right? But then I would also move to the E string. So here I am, I'm gonna go down a minor third here, taking me to the E string in which I play this shape. That's how I practice these. I'd move them around just like I'm doing right here. Transitioning, it's almost like you're playing a lead, right? If I start on this A flat right here, that's one of the simple lead figures that we came up with. Maybe do a chord on each of those notes. So here, these two, then these two, then these two, a chord on each one. Looks like this. Take a look at the bass notes, right? I'm just playing chords built off of all of those notes. And because everything is always the same structure, everything is copy and pasteable, super easy to do once you memorize these shapes. Now, there are a couple other things you can do with these shapes to get some more variety, and the first one is very common when you're playing the shape on the E string. So I'm going to play it down here off of B, one of the main notes of our diminished sound we've been messing with. Here's the chord shape, we just went over it. Root, up a tritone, up a minor third, up a tritone. Perfectly fine chord shape to play, but on this low register, on these 4 strings, it can sound a little dark. So what many people will do instead of playing this exact shape is they will move the second note of this figure, that kind of first tritone that you play, they will move this note up an octave. So instead of B, F, A flat, D, right? They will skip the F, put it on the top right here. So instead you have B, skip the F, A flat, D, and then F. So the shape looks like this. E string, no A string, D string, G string, and then B string right here. Make no mistake, it's still the same chord. We just moved this second string, that kind of first tritone, up an octave. So it looks like this. I'm barring the D string and B string right there. My ring finger's on the G string, middle finger right here. So you can take a look at that. You can also play it like this, of course. Right, kind of, I'm playing those 3 notes, popping my ring finger down to the low E string. Very common modification because it gives you kind of a thicker sound with that low E string, but it doesn't sound super dark and muddy, which it can if you cram all of these notes in that low register on those 4 strings. But it's still the same chord though, right? This is B, F, A flat, D. If I move that F up an octave right here, it's still B, F, A flat, D, just move the notes around. So now we can kind of look at this as a different chord shape. What are the intervals we have here? So we have a root right here. What is this interval? That is what most people would call a sixth. Why is that? Because that's almost like the 6th note of a major scale. If I just play a major scale right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can also think about this though as down a minor third and up an octave. So watch this. Here's my root. If I go down a minor third, back 3 frets, takes me right here, but bump that note up an octave and you get this. There's that root. Look back a minor third, jump up an octave. That is this distance, a 6th. You don't have to necessarily memorize that. It's kind of good to know because it keeps you grounded on the fretboard in regards to what's happening, but that is what that would be. Then past this note, what do we have? Pretty normal. Up a tritone, then up a minor third. And there's our full chord. You can also look at this in another way that might be even easier. This shape is actually the D string shape that we went over earlier, a note, up a tritone, up a minor third, up a tritone, but we're just kind of transporting this high E string B to the low E string B, right? Here's that D string shape. Take this high B from the high E string and just move it here. That's kind of the same thing. That's another way you can look at this chord, right? It's a nice shape though, very valuable. And again, copy and pasteable just like these chords always are. Well, if this shape is kind of nice, can I do this same sort of structure on another set of strings? Can I do this on the A string? Of course I can. Let's find a location. I'm on B right here. When we jump up to this F, it's one of the places you can copy and paste the chords. On the A string, we already know it's this, a root, up a tritone, up a minor third, up a tritone. We know that. But we can instead play what? The different shape. A root up a 6th, looks the same. Up a tritone, looks a little bit different because the tuning of that string. Up a minor third. So I can do this right here. Right? And again, the notes are still the same pool of notes we've been talking about this whole time. F, D, A flat, and B. barring right here. You don't necessarily have to bar. You can do this if you want to, or maybe that. A bunch of different ways to play this chord. It's kind of up to you to get a comfortable fingering. But this voicing is the exact same voicing as this. Just looks different on a different set of strings. But this one's, again, really nice because it's a little bit more spread out. You have a lower note and some higher notes. So sometimes that might be the choice for you. If we try to do this on the D string, right, a note, not the tritone, but up a sixth, looks like this because the tuning of the guitar. Up a tritone, we actually don't have another string to play that final note. So to play the full 4-note version of this chord with this particular shape where you have a note, up a sixth, up a tritone, up a minor third, only really is feasible based off of the E string or based off of the A string. Okay, so that's another kind of cool voicing you can mess with. Another thing that you can do, especially if you're copying and pasting these chords around the fretboard like you know you can do, is not play all 4 strings of the shape. So for example, if I play this voicing that we just came up with, where you have the E string, up a sixth, kind of the more spread sounding one, E string, up a sixth, up a tritone, up a minor third, like this. If I leave out the B string and just play E string, D string, and then G string, you might say, wait a minute, that's not the full chord. I've only got B, A flat, and D. In order to play this full diminished 7 sound, don't I need all 4 notes? I don't have an F, right? So this technically isn't correct. Technically it's not, but first of all, it doesn't really matter. It still clearly sounds like the chord you're going for. But the moment you move this in either direction, up or down a minor third, you will have that final note that you need. So remember, this chord does not have an F, so technically it's not diminished 7, but the moment I copy and paste it up 3 frets, up a minor third, guess what that top note is? That's an F. So by doing this, I'm actually getting the full chord by hitting all the notes. I can even go backwards. Like that, guess what note is in here? An F. So that missing note of the chord will always be in the next copied and pasted location, right? So why would you do this in the first place, by the way, these small shapes? Sometimes they're a little bit more subtle. They're a little bit prettier. They're not as aggressive sounding as the full thing, just a smaller shape. And sometimes they go really well if you are playing other chords like this, kind of thinner voicings. They work really well going back and forth between the minor chord that you would be transitioning to, something that we're going to talk about here next in the video. So for example, if I was playing this diminished chord, which is the diminished chord that takes us to A minor, like we'll talk about, if I just play this little mini diminished chord, only 3 notes worth, and transition to as many A minors as I can, it's a very nice sound. So I'll try it. So here's the diminished, A minor, diminished, A minor, right? Diminished, A minor, diminished, A minor. You can even move this to another string. So I'll start here, diminished, A minor, diminished, A minor, diminished, A minor, diminished, A minor, right? Very pretty sound. And it's a little bit more delicate because you're not playing like the full all 4 notes. And it allows for the notes, because there are less notes happening in each shape, it allows for each one to kind of stand out a little more. That's kind of a side note. If you're playing chord shapes, sometimes it's nice to leave notes out, because the more notes you have, the harder it is to hear the individual flavors of the notes of the chord. So sometimes smaller voicings can be a little bit more valuable depending on what you're doing. I also like to use these a lot in leads, something we'll talk about as well, where instead of playing them like this, I'll kind of do that sort of thing. Very cool sound, very easy to do with pick and fingers, which you'll see here in a moment. So that's basically it in regards to chord shapes, right? There aren't that many. We either have what? We have our standard voicing where we're playing a note, up a tritone, up a minor third, up a tritone, which we did on the D string, on the A string, and on the E string like this. Or you can get that slightly more spread version where you move that second note up an octave, which looks like this, a note, up a sixth, up a tritone, up a minor third, right? Which you can do that on the E string and on the A string. Looks like this. And then, of course, you can play smaller versions, leave notes out, play little baby pieces of the chord. How about this? I'll take this chord, shape I just played, I'll leave out that bass note and just play these 3. Right? Again, I don't have the full chord, but the moment I move it up, I will have the full chord, because that next location will always have the note that you're missing. So the final thing I want to talk about in regards to these chords, which can be a little strange, what are these called? Like, so if I play this right here, what do I call this? So naturally, you would just look at the bass note and say, okay, well, that's a D, so therefore this is D diminished 7. And that's true, right? But I know that I can take this chord and move it up 3 frets, and it's still the same thing. So this is still D diminished 7, but this is the bass note. So this is an F. So is this F diminished 7 as well? Yes, it is. In fact, any of the notes of this chord can be the potential root of the chord. So if I play this chord right here, that note is D, therefore this is D diminished 7. But this note is A flat, therefore this is A flat diminished 7 as well. And then this is a B, so this is B diminished 7 as well. And then this note is F, so this is an F diminished 7 as well. No matter where you move it, you're really playing the same chord over and over again. And because of this really unique nature, any of these notes can be the root, right? Naturally, we always look at like the bass note for chords as, oh, that's the root. But with this, the pointer finger can be the root. You can look at the G string as your root location and then play the chord off that, right? You can say, oh, look, there's a D. I'm going to play the chord based off this. Looks like this. That's D diminished 7. If you wanted to, if you're playing like the D string shape right here, right? Root, up a tritone, up a minor third, up a tritone. You can look at the high E string as your root location. You can say that's a D, pop the chord down right here. That's D diminished. But it's also B diminished. And it's also A flat diminished. And it's also F diminished, right? Diminished 7. And that's just the nature of these chords. So every time you see, you know, a chord that says A flat diminished, you kind of want to say, well, that's also B diminished, and it's also F diminished, and it's also D diminished, because that's just the nature of these chords. Every time you pop these down, always have the other notes kind of passively in mind, because it'll make it a lot easier to make little modifications and adapt around the fretboard. You now have all of the information you need to create lead and chord figures around the fretboard. And in part 2, we're going to take all of these shapes and figure out how to use them in an improvising context over a standard minor chord. See you in the next one.